I'd love to kick off with you talking about your experience leading you to Los Angeles more. Please tell us about, this challenger brand that harnesses the power of nature through the lens of science, which I love. I think that's a beautiful way to express a holistic approach, and how you got to find this sweet spot, finding white space within a very crowded world of wellness and hair care.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had my 1 year anniversary at Vegamore a couple days ago. It's crazy that it's already been a year, speaking through the pandemic. I took this job, and this is just, such a change from what it was before, but took this job completely remotely through Zoom. So, I was living in New York, which is what we talked about, working at Saks Fifth Avenue, and this opportunity came up, and I met the founder through a series of Zoom interviews, and through that, talking through the opportunity of the growth of the brand, decided to move my family from New York to LA, having only been to LA 3 days prior. So I think with the what's happening in the world, it kind of makes you think about things differently, and take chances. So I joined Vegamore about a year ago, and we've just been on a tremendous growth path. So in 2020, we did 8x in revenue, what we did in 2019. And, this year we're hoping to do 3x what we did last year. So it's been a really amazing journey. For us, our business model is all D2C currently, looking at expanding into other channels, but it's really about growing the D2C channel and how we think about marketing in the most data-driven way. So excited to talk with you about that today.
So, and likewise, because, I know I've certainly been targeted by the brand. And in fact, since our phones do listen to us, when you and I hung up yesterday, I got served another influencer for Vegamore, and actually it was a friend of mine who I didn't even know was currently working with the brand. So it was just
wow, small world
clash of kind of everything we had just talked about in terms of using digital channels and being careful about targeting and the right audience, and really looking to a lifetime user. So I would love if you could give us a bit of a deep dive on how you've used the channels effectively. I know for you, 3 of the pillars we talked about were education, subscription, and retention specifically, but to really create engagement marketing and not just direct marketing. So would love if you could take us down that path.
Yeah, so I think, for Vegamore, we're probably similar to other D2C companies where our main acquisition channels are paid social, so mostly Facebook, Instagram, and Google. I think for us, one of the things that has allowed us to be really profitable and scale is thinking about not just the acquisition cost, but how that marries against the lifetime value. So when we think about, the ads that we're putting out there and the campaigns and the audiences, we don't think about that from just a pure CAC perspective, but, we are actually looking at the data and saying, okay, what's the predictive LTV that customer is going to give us, and really making sure we're going after that cohort. So, especially starting out with even the content in our ads, and, maybe what you've seen is there's a lot of education. We don't do a lot of static ads. I think just putting that other, I think we realize that video and telling a story and making sure that the customer is educated from when they're coming in is what we found to be really effective in getting that repurchase to offset some of the high, acquisition costs that we're seeing as advertisers come back and CPMs continue to increase in some of the core digital channels. So I think that's, for us, what we found to be really effective. We have 2 models, both, customers that can buy our products through one time or through subscription. I think we found a sweet spot of how to opt a certain percentage of those customers into a subscription model, which also allows us to offset that higher acquisition cost. But I think, it's really about marrying, I think before I joined, it was kind of, okay, let's look at just the platform ROAS, or let's just look at the CPA or the CAC, which is a bit one-sided because it doesn't tell the other side of the story, which is how you marry retention with acquisition.
And how do you feel that what you're doing, what is it that you're doing differently in the retention space that's really enabling you to enjoy this level of success and growth?
Yeah, so I think the first part is, making sure our customers are educated from the beginning. So, I think sometimes people order a product, and especially for ours, it does take time and consistency to see results with it. So instead of, someone like a weight loss program, like expecting to lose 50 pounds in 5 days, which is not going to happen. I think we say, hey, it's going to take a while. You need to stick with it. And it's a new routine that you're building up. So it's from the beginning, making sure that's very clear and making sure that customer is educated. And then right from purchase, making sure we have the right campaigns from an email, SMS perspective, so that we're educating them. We're sending them an email right when they should be getting the product. Okay, after a week, we're saying, hey, don't expect to see results right away. You need to make sure it's a habit. We're giving them tips of set an alarm on your phone, take a picture. How we want to handhold them through the journey, because one is a different habit, and two, it is also personal as well. We want to make sure we're there for our customers and making sure that the experience they're having with Vegamour is holistic, just like what we want our products to be.
Yeah, and it's certainly emotional. I mean, people's relationship with their hair is very special.
Yeah, I think especially during COVID.
Yeah.
Now I think a lot of people have expressed hair loss through stress, in this time, and that's kind of brought the conversation more to the forefront. I think before, especially for women, I think men talk about it almost all the time of, hey, this is kind of natural, but for women it was not as talked about, whereas it's been great seeing this conversation saying, hey, it's normal, everyone experiences it, here's what's available, here's, we want to also grow a community that we have on Facebook, where we have people, our customers, talking about not just Vegamore, but other products that they're trying, different, what they're going through, the results that they're seeing. And it's great seeing this community that's more about just, Facebook ads and, this purchase, but how people are really supporting each other through our brand.
So to that effect, I mean, ultimately you're creating a community as well, and storytelling your way through a subscription model, a retention model, and really, sort of scaffolding the beginnings of, what is brand marketing. So I'd love to dive in not only to, just sort of like what the evolution of that looks like from, a creative perspective and how to scale that, because it is, it's a wonderful story. And I think, to your point, having been able to grow so significantly during COVID is so interesting. It was a rough year. So people are having, hair loss on the one end from stress. And then on the other hand, people have never had sort of more time to, kind of take care of themselves and address a lot of sort of like the wellness and beauty category at home, which is why we saw such, huge surges in 2020, certainly. So, from a media mix modeling perspective and the challenge of growing brand, and obviously the expense of growing brand, how do you plan to look to other channels as you go forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we realize that we can't just rely on those core paid channels like Facebook and Google. We're starting to test into other channels. And, I think for us, since we're such a data-driven brand, that we want to make sure there's measurement and how we do it. We're onboarding an MTA vendor, and we just really want to be smart about how we spend that next dollar and making sure it's incremental. I think for us, especially with a new brand that's only D2C, there's, what we saw when we did some consumer insights work is that there was a lack of awareness. I think we have really strong brand loyalty from the customers that we have acquired, but from, overall, when you're competing with some of the larger names, there was a lack of awareness. So I think it's about how we think about that full funnel, what the additional, channels that we're testing into, whether those are podcasts or, I know we talked about out of home, from a data-driven perspective. I think how that all comes in and makes sure that we can measure it is really important for us.
So my personal experience with the brand has been a lot of, experiencing the content through the lens of social. So talk to me about how that channel has been important in your storytelling, growth, retention, education.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of our currently our primary channel. I think, we're able to hone in on the audiences that perform well. And I think we've developed a test and learn process that allows us to continue testing different content, different funnels, from the ads to the landing pages that allow us to make sure we're speaking different messaging. I think, as you mentioned, hair in particular is really personal for women, but it's not all the same. Some people want to grow their hair to be really long and full, and some people are, experiencing hair loss or hair thinning. There's different goals of hair goals, as you can say, and we want to make sure we're speaking to those and not just speaking to a wider audience. I think people have also said, why don't you target men and women? How do you think about that? And I think for us, we want to be really specific to the audiences that we're talking to and making sure that we have content throughout. But I think there is a certain ceiling likely of, for the core channels, and we want to make sure we're also diversifying from a risk perspective. We all know we've talked about iOS 14, all these things that are outside of our control. So we want to think about our media mix and how we make sure that we're de-risking, finding new avenues to acquire customers, and also acquiring the right customers.
Has there been anything, as you've been testing and learning in the last, 2 years, let's say, or year since you've been there, that hasn't really worked the way you expected it might? Like, I think, it's always a great opportunity to talk about the things that equally, don't work.
Yeah, I think, we've been experimenting a lot with different, leading with which product. We have, our hero SKU, which is our hair serum, and we've for most of 2020 we had basically 4 SKUs and 2 variations of those SKUs, and then late last year we really expanded our product range. I think right now what we're learning is how we balance out marketing, not just the hero SKU but new SKUs, how you balance out the increases in CPMs with what the returns are from an AOV perspective. So I think there's a lot that we've learned, and also what ads and content really resonate across different channels. We've tested different formats, different models, and making sure what models resonate. I think we mentioned, there's one I think that people recall from our ads, which her name is Carolyn, not me, but she has just the most amazing hair. But we saw that she resonated with certain audiences, but not others. So I think it's really about segmenting and making sure the content that we're putting in front of their customers are really resonating. We're sending them through the right funnels.
So you're using, sort of the influencers or, brand spokespeople, if you will, as part of the actual targeting itself to see, what personalities map back to potential.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think.
I'm sure Caroline has visited my Instagram feed.
Yes.
I'm very confident about that.
Yes. For sure. And I think, people have different, again, she has really long, beautiful, full hair, but then, we have other content that talks about, hey, it's really hard to experience hair thinning, but everyone, it happens to everyone, and you're not alone, and that resonates with a different audience. So we want to make sure we're not just pushing the same messaging out and trying to have a one size fits all, but really thinking about, okay, what messages resonate with this audience? How do we educate them when they come to the site so that they're converting? Then how do we make sure we're, from a retention standpoint, giving them the right experience so that they're sticking with our brand and not just saying, okay, I bought it, then I forgot, and we continue to move on.
Got it. Has there been anything that has been unexpected that you found in sort of the data feedback loop in terms of, sort of person to person targeting, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising because you think certain, content or models should work with different audiences, but that's not always the case. I think one thing that we talked about, which has been somewhat challenging for a growing brand, is the team size and how we continue to scale, not just our media spend, but also the team that's there to support both, additional ad campaigns as well as content creation. So I think, as we're finding, hey, this model works or this message really resonates, now we're kind of faced with, how do we scale the team so that we can create more of that? And that's what we're currently working on.
Got it. So In terms of brand expansion, you did drop a little carrot with me, and we won't scoop anything, but in terms of sort of next phases for the brand, do you want to talk a little bit about growth and goals and what that might look like, in terms of brick and mortar and expansion into other retailers and
Yeah.
helping the brand sort of really, be beyond the DTC channel. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think, the ultimate goal for Vegamore is to create this white space of hair wellness and really be kind of the brand that's associated with that, from a customer standpoint. And I think we know that we can't just do that through our own D2C channel in just, North America. So for us, it's really, I think, as we think about the next 2-year plan, it's expanding from D2C to omni-channel, partnering with, with a very large beauty brick and mortar or wholesaler that hopefully should be announced soon, and then really expanding into other regions. We know that hair wellness and the Vegamore products is not just a North America targeted product, but should, I think women everywhere globally are experiencing, the need for Vegamore products. So I think our focus is how we expand that from a D2C perspective into other regions. But again, that comes with not just marketing challenges, but also operational challenges. So those are some things that are currently on our roadmap.
What are the wish list sort of next regions for rollout? Where are you hoping to exist in the world next?
Yeah, I think for us, it's really, we feel like definitely EU and the UK. We started testing into it and seen some great feedback from those channels. In addition, China, Korea, we've started, working with a couple of influencers there. So we feel like there's a couple of major regions for us. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like, which, different content, different strategies, but it's really exciting to think about the potential expansion.
Completely. And how does that also affect in terms of targeting? You mentioned earlier that right now it's focused toward women. I'm sure with diversity and an incredible, LGBTQIA audience out there, of whom everybody still loves hair, whatever that hair looks like, that person at that time. How are you starting to think about, even within the same model, messaging to that, extended community as well?
Yeah, I think, it's really about diversifying our marketing, content, the assets, making sure that, again, it's how we speak to those audiences, how we make sure that the messaging that we're delivering is resonating within that, and just looking at, what those target audiences are and making sure that the messaging is relevant for those people.
Fantastic. So we're going to have Q&A shortly, but we do still have some time. So I'd love if you could just share maybe some of like your favorite moments or defining moments for Vegamore as a brand, whether that's, maybe there's something that happened on social or in the real world. Who do you think is doing it really well in the DTC space at large? It doesn't need to be specific to beauty by any means. Would just love to hear a little bit more from you, being on the inside of a very, very happy, popular.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's been such for us, I think for me, especially, it's been amazing seeing the team grow. When I joined Vegamore a year ago, we were 8 people. If you could imagine, just a very lean startup. We also do all creative and media buying in-house. So, I mean, it was a very, very lean organization. Right now we're at, I think 32 people. So we've just scaled the team. So that's been incredibly, rewarding and amazing just to bring on such an amazing team to help the business scale. And it's been super exciting because we're trying to do things, differently than previous D2C companies to figure out, okay, what is the right testing methodology, what's the right media mix for us, how do we look at our customers differently in our messaging. So it's been really great to collaborate with the team, and I think that's been the most rewarding piece to that. Of course, for us, Black Friday, Cyber Monday was like an insane period. I don't think we ever expected that type of result. We were able to really scale our media, acquire customers really efficiently. We saw those customers come back. I heard from the previous session that they ran into some operational issues, and we ran into those as well. So I don't think we ever expected that big of a lift. And they were mentioning having issues getting the products off the boat, like get it undocked from the port, and we're experiencing something similar. So it's been really rewarding trying to figure out those challenges and work with the team, and also build a team to scale. I think companies that we think are doing it really well, I get ads from Curology all the time. I think they're thinking about, having different content for different audiences. I think their landing pages are really strong, and we definitely take some inspiration and think about how that resonates for Vegamore. I think Ritual also does, things really well. And from an onboarding standpoint and their ads and how they look at it, then I think you think about kind of the best in class larger D2C brands like Harry's and Warby Parker. I mean, those, they kind of pave the way. And I think there's still some, look at what they were able to do in that customer relationship that they were able to harness and how they expanded across different channels. I think there's still, it was amazing what they were able to do. And how we kind of take those learnings and figure out, okay, what's the Vegamore way to do that? I'm curious, what about you? Like, I'm sure you guys look at, best practices all the time and think about what's next. So would be curious to get your take.
Sure. I love the question in return. So it's a really relevant one, particularly, coming into the out of home space for me.
Yeah.
Direct to consumer has just been a massive channel. And we've seen that behavior actually also replicate like through the tech sector too. So for me, I think as a lot of the D2C brands have started, they've all started with digital channels, right? So we've come to know them through our social feeds and through, search certainly. And then, I think as that rapid growth happens and you start to need to layer in the brand, whether you're thinking about more funding, whether you're thinking about going public and going the IPO route. So out of home becomes very prevalent in terms of becoming a brand in the world and in culture. So we're steeped in it and I love it. For me, some of my favorite campaigns that have actually resonated, and this one is like a real-time thing because I traveled a couple of weeks ago and I, opened up the cabinet and like the suitcases were so dusty, and the ones that I used for travel all of a sudden looked so small, even though I could do a week in New York in them. And I was like, I got in my car and I drove to the Away store and I just bought a suitcase, like no questions asked. I didn't even and I was kind of scared of the hard case because I feel like with soft, you can shove more in there and I'm a shoe girl. So we always need more room. And so, just kind of having watched the evolution of that brand. And I think, sort of the ones who have done it well, where it's a really nice sort of combination of out of home plus social channels, of course, having sort of, ongoing, really pertinent kind of conversations with their brand customers on a regular basis, eventually kind of really seep in. And I'm even seeing a lot of them now starting to go the direct mail route again. I'm starting to get catalogs constantly. It feels like 1980 up in my, poor mailbox. It hurts my heart a little bit for the trees, but, all of a sudden, another, I think a really good D2C example, is someone like Parachute, who came out really strong and then, moved into retail. And now all of a sudden I have these beautiful catalogs on my table and I need bedding. And it's like the brand that's in my mind. I've never bought it. I've been watching it for years, but I'm moving into the next cycle, much like with Away, that resonates and sort of, stays with me.
It's been super interesting of like taking channels that, people think of like, okay, that was 5 years ago or 3 years ago and no longer relevant D2C, and how those channels have really evolved and brought like a data-driven component. We're talking about programmatic out of home. I mean, I was at Saks and we did, a ton of out of home, but it was always really hard to measure of like taxi tops and, the bus shelters, that how people are able, companies are really evolving to be able to show, hey, this is the incremental lift that you see. And, from a funnel perspective, it's been really exciting to match those channels with the data-driven, approach that we're moving towards.
And I think that's the beauty where the two things can now be married. So for example, like, one of the things when I walking into the out-of-home category that I used to joke about. And since I live in Los Angeles and now you do too, I always felt like, you know, Sunset Boulevard was like my new version of the TV guide that we grew up with. Like if I didn't work in the business and I didn't see RFPs, I think the only way I would know what I was watching would be by driving up and down La Cienega and Sunset all the time. That's my roadmap for what I'm watching next. And now with that ability with digital media and, you know, mobile retargeting, you know, it's like if I drive by those boards, now I'm being reminded on my phone, you know, however much later, you know, this HBO Max show or this Netflix show or this, you know, next movie, or by the way, the, you know, Cruella, you know, collaborations that are happening are now, you know, being served to me. And so the, you know, the headspace continues to keep me going down the funnel. So, you know, it's
sure.
EDC, but I'm seeing it in other categories too, you know, certainly for tech. And I think that they've done it really beautifully in terms of kind of, you know, Twitter, especially marrying what's happening in culture, you know, to messaging in a way that really resonates. And I think, you know, brands that sort of, you know, can find that sweet spot, we're seeing a ton of success and resonating messages as well. But I appreciate, I appreciate.
Yeah, of course.
And as we get into our last 10 minutes, there are quite a few questions for you. And I think this one was teed up really well, that has a lot to do with customer journey and how have you seen it evolve, you know, particularly since you are storytelling, you're leveraging, you know, influencers, you're getting the feedback loop from your consumers by being able to have them, you know, be a part of a subscription model and work through that feedback. So how have the changes in customer journey impacted your approach to, you know, digital media or just media in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we think about it in how we can reach them in different ways and what's the most effective channels that we can reach them after we acquire them. You know, I think we've talked a lot about acquisition, and then, you know, after that, I think one of the biggest focuses for us is after we acquire them, what are the right channels to continue talking to them on, and how do we continue to engage them beyond just a pure marketing perspective, whether that's getting them involved in our community on Facebook, getting them, you know, in our loyalty program, getting them, you know, we want to have experts so that if they have questions, which, you know, people have such a unique situation that they're in, you know, making sure that they have experts to ask, whether that's a concierge program or an appointment that they can book. I think it's giving them access to different points and making sure that they understand, hey, here's how all these things play together, and thinking about the most effective channel to serve that up, whether that's email, SMS, how we get them back on our site, you know, how we bring experts in. I think those are all, you know, how we want to continue to evolve the customer journey with us.
And what's top of mind for you as you think about supporting and engaging today's consumer? How might it look different than your days at Saks or Calvin or, you know, Boston Consulting Group previously?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like it's so much different. I feel like the customer expectations are really different, that, like, you know, attention spans are much different. I think from a content perspective, before it was commercials and, you know, huge you know, when I was at Calvin, it was billboards and huge, like Justin Bieber, you know, in his underwear campaigns, which now is like, you know, from when I think about the content of Calvin versus at Vegamour, it's a lot different. And I think it's, how do you stay relevant to the customer? How do you make sure you're being served in the channels in which they're looking? How do you do marketing slightly differently so that, you know, your content doesn't look the same as everyone else's? I think that's the conversation we have a lot, which is we can't look like every other beauty company, because they're going to see so much of that. And, you know, it's the easiest thing just to scroll past that, but how do you make sure you're resonating? And it's a consistently evolving process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super interesting. And so I think a question that backs up to that well is, you know, from a consumer engagement perspective with your products, how does that drive the content strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really like, you know, we do a lot of consumer insights work to understand of our current customers, what's resonating, why did they buy, what was the concern, you know, what else are they shopping. So I think it's a consistent feedback loop that's not just, hey, what's performing well, but making sure, okay, did the content that we were serving match up with the original intent, and how do we make sure it continues to improve along relevancy there? And I think it's just us being able to use, you know, as much data points as possible to think about that, and also being creative. You know, I think for us, one thing that I have to balance is I come from a very data-driven mindset, but Dan, you know, the founder, has the vision, and along with our VP of marketing, creating this white space. So it's not just about what's worked before, but how you weave in kind of the art and science to make sure that you're not just iterating on tests, but also thinking about new messaging and seeing what resonates.
So as you're thinking about your customer, these are two questions that are kind of related. How are you thinking about them now and in sort of what the new normal is? And I think part two of that is, you know, how did, you know, COVID impact your marketing strategy and your transformation plans as you go into the new year? Because I think they're kind of tied closely together.
Yeah, I think it's for sure. I think it's a couple of things. I think, you know, it starts with one, at least from a distribution standpoint, right? During COVID, it was just D2C. We were very much focused on it. And now, you know, as we see go to the new normal, okay, what does that look like? How do we expand our distribution so that we're reaching places, you know, people are going to go back to stores. How do we make sure our products are there? You know, people are going to be outside traveling. Those are all new activities that we just haven't done in the past year. So how do we make sure we're continuing to stay relevant, and also being realistic about, hey, you know, there was this COVID impact across our paid marketing, but, you know, it's going to be more competitive, and, you know, people are going to spend their share of wallet across, you know, travel and experiences and dining that they just weren't doing in the past year. So I think it's a mixture of those. I think from a product standpoint, we've also been evolving so that, you know, we have our dry shampoo launch and a shampoo and conditioner. So you just don't have to use the serum. How do we make sure that we're also having products that fit into, you know, everyone's new routine that is slightly different than what people were doing? You know, I think for a period of time, was working from home. I wasn't putting on that much makeup. You know, it was slightly different. Now you're like, okay, I have to like put on makeup and do my hair. And it's like, okay, what are the products? How do we make sure we continue to change our product assortment so that, you know, we're changing with the customer as the new normal evolves?
And I would imagine it also opens the doors to have sort of a different tenor and tone in your creative. You know, I think a lot of brands, you know, were very careful to be out there, but still be sort of conservative and appropriate, you know, during a unprecedented year, if you will. And now to your point, you know, it's like, is it travel? Is it dinner? Are we shopping? Oh my, you know, there's like everyone that, and then those dollars are going to be dispersed in our, you know, lifestyles again differently. So have you already started to see the shift in your communication and tone in terms of content that you're putting out from an ad perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we talk about for sure. And again, I think this goes back to like the testing of like, okay, different audiences will have different, you know, tones and content that will resonate. And, you know, I think everyone is a bit unclear of what the new normal is. You know, I think we're still trying to figure it out in LA, which is also different than New York. And, you know, we have to also think about where our customers are and what they're experiencing. I think that was one of the eye-opening things, even during the time of COVID, like what was happening in LA was much different than what was happening in New York. And I think for us, it's also getting to that level where we're really thinking about, okay, from our customers, where are they, and, you know, what are they experiencing?
Exactly. Oh, I like this question. So in terms of, I'll rephrase it a little bit, in terms of like what's keeping you up at night of it all, you know, what's top of mind for you as you think about supporting and engaging today's consumer, right? So knowing that you're working off of data-driven, you know, feedback loops and, you know, building content and a brand, you know, what are sort of the things that you're always kind of just most careful about or nervous about, you know, feel like you need that extra support in?
Yeah, I think, you know, for us, it's really around like building this team.
You're just growing.
And I think that's the focus for us. You know, we're a really lean team for the size of the business. So I think kind of the focus for us is building the team and the processes to sustain our growth. You know, I think we have a ton of good ideas, and we for a fast growing company, it's okay, how do we make sure we're finding the team that can execute against it? Obviously, the other thing is like, what's the new normal and what does that look like? You know, for us, I think one of the things is we need to continue to test into new channels to de-risk from the core ones, which is another piece. But I think those are the two things that kind of keep us up at night, is how do we continue to scale? How do we, make sure that we're building the right foundations, into like, how do we prepare as things change and make sure we're not putting all our eggs in one basket?
Yeah. So in terms of that, we'll do one last question. In terms of that new normal, I think this is a good question. Given the rapid speed of culture today, how do you think about maintaining relevance and structuring for that agility? I know you mentioned content creation as sort of, one piece of it, but, what sort of notes are you taking in culture as it feeds into, the brand continuing to grow, be highly relevant and appealing?
Yeah, I think that's one of the, magical things about having a pure, like for us, the pure D2C, and we'll continue to stay a primary D2C business, is how quickly you're able to pivot. And if we see that things aren't resonating, or, we've had different promotions or different ads that aren't working, what we've done is just take them off, and we're really able to pivot, which I haven't had that luxury before of, okay, things are planned months in advance and they have to go. So I think that's something that we'll continue to do, and really leverage to our benefit, is being able to move really quickly.
And final favorite product, or can you choose amongst your children?
Obviously our hair serum is absolutely amazing, but the shampoo and conditioner, like, I feel like I'm obsessed with, and I have to send you some to try. Maybe we meet for coffee in the street that you used to live on. So
exactly.
I'll bring you some to try.
Amazing. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and your insights and enthusiasm around the brand and the categories. This has been really fun. I loved it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great speaking to you, Rachel. Thanks, Izzy.
Hi, Izzy.
And thank you for closing out our day on D2C marketing. It was a really great day of a lot of speakers and some insightful conversations, learning about how to stay connected with consumers and the different marketing strategies that are used to make sure brands are actively engaged with their audience. So we hope you will all join us tomorrow on May 26th at 1:20 p.m. Eastern for the virtual summit on CMO marketing leadership. We'll be joined by marketing leaders from Wells Fargo, Lenovo, Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, Vistaprint, SiriusXM, and many more. Thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you all again soon.